So I think that when it comes to investing, you really need to be able to use technology because it is the speed at which certain things are happening that will allow you to be able to move ahead and to be able to succeed. However, if you use a strategy like Warren Buffett, you don't really need that. I think he still just does his manual calculations. He buys, he holds for the long term. There are different ways of doing it. So you need to figure out what is going to be most important to you. Now, technology comes with a cost. So obviously you need to pay for things to have the right technology. So you have to factor that into your investing. So if your investing makes you more money, then you can do that. But if your technology costs you more than you are making, well, then that's probably not such a great thing to do, huh? Hope everybody is well today. And I've been feeling a little bit unwell since yesterday afternoon. But the show goes on, and I'm still excited. Principles by Dalio, and I think that today is going to be absolutely amazing day. I was very, very thankful for my body healing and doing everything that it needed to do. My heart rate was up. It meant that my body was pumping everything, all the good stuff that it needed to everywhere so that it could fix everything. I don't know what was going on, but it is completely okay. Let's get into the reading because that will distract me from anything else that I'm feeling. So, making Bridgewater rock solid and cutting edge. Here we go. At our annual town hall meeting in June 2008, I said that seen through my eyes, Bridgewater was then and always had been both terrible and terrific at the same time. After about 5 years of rapid growth toward building Bridgewater as an institution, we had encountered our newest set of problems. This was nothing new. Since I started Bridgewater, we always had some problems because we were always doing bold new things, making mistakes and evolving quickly. For example, technology at hand changed so quickly during the years we built the company that we had literally switched from using slide rules to spreadsheet software to advanced artificial intelligence. With so much changing so fast, it had seemed pointless to focus on getting everything just right when something newer and better was sure to come along. So I built our technology in a light and flexible way, which made sense at the time, but also created a number of hairballs that badly needed untangling. That same approach of moving quickly and flexibly had been true throughout the company, so several departments had become overstretched as we grew. It had always been fun being cutting edge, but we were having a hard time becoming rock solid, especially in the non-investment side of the business. The organization needed to be renovated in several ways, but it wasn't going to be easy. So I think that when it comes to investing, you really need to be able to use technology because it is the speed at which certain things are happening that will allow you to be able to move ahead and to be able to succeed. However, if you use a strategy like Warren Buffett, you don't really need that. I think he still just does his manual calculations. He buys, he holds for the long term. There are different ways of doing it. So you need to figure out what is going to be most important to you. Now, technology comes with a cost. So obviously you need to pay for things to have the right technology. So you have to factor that into your investing. So if your investing makes you more money, then you can do that. But if your technology costs you more than you are making, well, then that's probably not such a great thing to do, huh? Okay, so in 2008, I was working about 80 hours a week doing my two full-time jobs, overseeing our investments and overseeing the company. And in my opinion, not doing enough at either. I felt that I and the company more broadly were slipping from being pervasively excellent. From the get-go, I had toggled acceptably between investment management and business management. But now that we were a bigger company, the business management side was demanding much more time than I had to give it. I conducted a time and motion study of all my investment and management responsibilities. It showed it would take me about 165 hours a week to achieve the level of excellence that I would be satisfied with in overseeing both our investments and management. That was obviously impossible. Since I wanted to delegate as much as possible, I asked whether the things I was doing could be done excellently by others, and if so, who those others were. Everyone agreed that most of those areas could adequately be delegated. I clearly hadn't done a good enough job of finding and training others to whom I could delegate my responsibilities. This is always very important. You're going to be very stuck if you don't get to the point where you are delegating and moving things forward And a lot of business owners will think they have to do everything themselves, but that is definitely not the case. You can get, there's a story that I usually used to tell. It's the fact that, let's say that I can get my work done 100%. So I make, let's say, $20,000 from a task that I do. And somebody else will make 18,000 from that same task because they're not as good as I am at it. But that 18,000, I am now no longer doing it. So I can focus on other things. So I can get two people to make $18,000. Now that is better than the 20,000 if I'm doing it on my own. So it becomes really good and really important when you start delegating, and you don't have to worry about whether somebody else does it as good as you can. Because yes, you might be able to earn 20,000, but you only have your time once. Whereas if I find two people and I delegate the same activity to two different people, they can produce 18,000 each. So that's then 36,000. That's more than the 20,000 that I was producing by myself. So that is what you're aiming for and what you want to go and get. To me, the greatest success you can have as a person in charge is to orchestrate others to do things well without you. A step below that is doing things well yourself, and worst of all is doing things poorly yourself. As I reflected on my position, I could see that despite all of my and Bridgewater's amazing achievements, I had not achieved this highest level of success. In fact, I was still struggling to achieve the second highest level, doing things well myself, even though Bridgewater was extremely successful. At the time, there were 738 people working at Bridgewater with 14 department heads. I oversaw the department heads along with the management committee I'd created because I knew I couldn't trust myself to know what was best without others probing me. I had structured the reporting line so that I both reported to the management committee and held its members accountable for their oversight of the company. I wanted them to also own the responsibility of producing persuasive excellence, and I wanted to be at their service in helping them achieve it. In May 2008, I wrote an email to the 5 members of the management committee copying the company, telling them that I am escalating to let you know that I have reached my limits and that the quality of my work and my work-life balance are both suffering unacceptably. The financial and economic crisis of 2008. Interesting how it happens at the same time. Recognizing that I was stretched wouldn't by itself be enough to slow the flow of things coming at me, especially in the investment area at what proved to be a time of historic turbulence. Because too often I had been painfully surprised by different types of events that hadn't happened to me before but happened in other times or other places, like the currency devaluation of 1971 or the debt crisis in the early 1980s. I developed our economic and market principles to be timeless and universal. In other words, I knew that we needed to understand all important economic and market movements, not just those that happened to me, and to make sure the principles we were using to position ourselves would have worked in all past times and all other countries. As a result, back in the early 2000s, we had included the depression gauge in our systems that specified the action we should take if a certain configuration of events began to play out in a way indicating a heightened risk of debt crisis and depression. In 2007, this gauge indicated that a bubble of debt was nearing its bursting point because the cost of debt service were outpacing projected cash flows. Because interest rates were so close to 0%, I knew that central banks would not ease monetary policy enough to reverse the downturn and the way they had in prior recessions. This was the exact configuration that had led to past depressions. My mind and gut flashed back to 1979-1982. I was both 30 years more knowledgeable and a whole lot less confident. While the dynamic in the economy seemed clear to me, I was much less sure I was right. I remembered how clearly it had seemed to me that the debt bust I'd been expecting in 1982 would sink the economy and how painfully wrong I had turned out to be. That experience also drove me to learn a lot more about debt crises and their effects on the market, and I researched and traded through a number of them, including the Latin American debt crisis in the 1980s, the Japanese debt crisis in the 1990s, the blow-up of long-term capital management in 1998, the bursting of the dot-com bubble in 2000, and the fallout from the attacks on the World Trade Center and Pentagon in 2001. With the help of my teammates at Bridgewater, I took history books and old newspapers and went day by day through the Great Depression and the Weimar Republic, comparing what happened then with what was happening in the present. The exercise only confirmed my worst fears. It seemed inevitable to me that large numbers of individuals, companies, and banks were about to have serious debt problems, and that the Federal Reserve couldn't lower interest rates to cushion the blow as was the case in 1930 to 1932. My fear of being wrong pushed me to seek out other smart folks to poke holes in my view. I also wanted to walk key policymakers through my thinking, both to stress test it and to make them aware of the situation as I saw it. So I went to Washington to speak with people in both the US Treasury and the White House. Though they were polite when I was presenting, seemed too far-fetched to them, especially when, by all outward indications, the economy seemed to be booming. Most of them didn't go very deep into our reasoning or calculations before they dismissed them. With one exception, Ramzan Farhad, Vice President Dick Cheney's Deputy Assistant of Domestic Policy. He worked through all our numbers and was concerned by them. Because everything we saw lined up and we couldn't find anyone who could refute our views, we prepared our clients' portfolios by balancing our positions in a way that there would be considerable upside and limited downside in the portfolios. If we were right and putting in a backup plan in case we were wrong, though we thought we were well prepared, we were as worried about being right as we were about being wrong. The prospect of the world economy going over a waterfall was very scary to us because of what it might mean to those who weren't protected. As in 1982, when conditions deteriorated and circumstances increasingly transpired as we predicted, policymakers began to pay more attention to us. But Farhad had come to me in the White House to meet with him. Tim Guyton, the president of the New York Fed, asked to see me as well. I thought Bob Gregg and a young analyst named Bob Elliott to a lunch meeting with Geithner. We walked him through the numbers and he literally turned white. When he asked me where we'd gotten them from, I told him they were publicly available. We just put them together and looked at them in a different way. 2 days after our meeting with Geithner, Bear Stearns collapsed. That didn't trigger much worry for most people or for the market, so it was a sign of what was to come. It wasn't until 6 months later in September, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, that everyone else connected the dots. At that point, the dominoes fell fast and they couldn't contain all the damage. Policymakers, most important Fed Chairman Bear Bernanke, reacted brilliantly to create a beautiful deleverage, a way of lowering debt burdens while keeping economic growth positive and inflation low. So you need to always be very up and aware of what is happening. Learn as much as you can and put into everything that you do as much of all of these things that you've learned so that you have as much information as possible. You don't want analysis paralysis. You don't want to keep analyzing without coming to a conclusion. But in this case, what they've done is they've come to a conclusion. And this time around, it turns out that it was correct. I think that the experience that Ray Dalio had allowed him to be able to say, okay, so in the past I've been wrong. I'm going to, again, go to people who are a little bit smarter. I'm going to talk to lots of different people. I have my information. I'm going to share it with people and see what other people also think. And in this case, he has been correct. To make this long story short, we navigated this period well for our clients, anticipating market moves and avoiding losses. Our flagship fund made over 14% in 2008, a year when many other investors recorded losses of more than 30%. We would have done even better had we not feared being wrong, which led us to balance our bets instead of arrogantly and foolishly putting more chips at stake. But I had no regrets because I've learned that it wasn't smart to bet that way. While in this case we would have made money if we were less balanced, we certainly wouldn't have survived and succeeded long enough to be in such a position if we'd approached our investments in that way. The 2008 debt crisis was another one of those like the one in 1982, which were both like many more before them and many more that will come. I enjoyed reflecting back on my painful mistakes and the value of the principles they gave me. When the next big one comes along in 25 years or so, or who knows when, it will probably come as a surprise and cause a lot of pain unless those principles are properly encoded in algorithms put into our computers. Now, obviously, we've had to talk about the fact that not everything turns out in exactly the same way because there are certain things, policies that change, economic circumstances are slightly different. But the more you can understand how everything fits together, and you can create these algorithms, these rules, these principles. I absolutely agree with Ray. That is absolutely invaluable. So what are your rules? What are your principles? Have you taken the time to learn about investing, about all of these different elements of what you are doing, about how the economy works? One thing that I want to do is I want to start a podcast about news, and we'll talk about what is in the news, what it means economically, how it fits together, and talk about those kinds of things. So let me know if that is something that would be interesting to you. You can do that by reaching out on Instagram. You can find it at business_team_6_official. And I am looking forward to hearing from you there. If you're interested in the real life cash flow simulator that we've created, which is really exciting, then you can reach out and let me know about that, and I'll get my VA, my virtual assistant, to send you the details so you can come and join us, where you can learn all of these things, where you can start creating your own principles, where you can start creating strategies around an investment strategy. So let me know if that's something that you are interested in. And also let me know your questions so that we can answer your questions on YouTube. We already have some questions going up. And yes, I love being able to answer your questions. So let me know what kind of investing, wealth creation, finance, economics questions you have, and we will answer those and put them up on YouTube. So if you like this series, we've got Principles by Ray Dalio. We read Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Art of Thinking Clearly, with my commentary as well. Then if you'd like to watch the replays, you can do that on YouTube. You can find us at The Passive Cash Flow Club. So make sure you subscribe, because we also answer questions, as I said. So it might be one of your questions that you have that you haven't asked yet, and you will be able to find the answer there. So look forward to seeing you on Instagram, look forward to seeing you on YouTube, and make sure that you subscribe so that you know when new videos are announced and uploaded, so that you can get benefit from those. So I'm going to leave you to have a great day. I'm going to get some more rest so that I can be absolutely back to my 100% after my little health hiccup from yesterday. But after this, I'm going to quickly go and see who has joined on Bigo, and we will say hello to everybody there. But for now, I'm going to say, remember to make the switch to unlock your rich. If you don't make any changes, then you're going to get the same results. So make sure that you make that switch, and then you can start to unlock your rich.